Welcome back to the channel, folks, and to our first battle report of 2022. This week I'm playing Mark and we're back to the desert. It seems like an appropriate kind of game to play, considering the first release of the year is going to be the desert compilation. So I'm bringing the, Army of Africa? It's not Africa Corps because I am fighting the Yanks. Mark's going to bring some Yanks. So let's go over and have a look at the lists. Here is my German list. Now it's using Cross of Iron. This is a game against Yanks, so it's a Tunisian setting, so it is appropriate to have something different from what you may be finding in the El Alamein setting. And to be honest, those dark infantry platoons, I really just can't use them. They're not really proper infantry platoons, they're just kind of like heavy weapons platoons, and you can't really go anywhere with them. Whereas these guys can all get up an assault, or at least the core infantry platoons can. So this is made up of a core formation of company command, and then two, these are grenadier platoons. 4 mortars, and then 3 Pak 38s, and that's the core formation. So it's a decent size in terms of durability. This isn't going to break unless something horrific happens, and I'd imagine it would have to be a very long game before that would happen. So that's the core formation, and then in support we've got one very expensive platoon of Panzer IIIs with a long barrel 50s. One of them has a short barrel, and then a platoon of 3 Panzer IIs and 3 armour cars, one of them with a 28mm anti-tank gun, 3 Marders to do the heavy anti-tank, and not looking very desert-like, folks, 3 Nebelwerfers. I don't really have any other options. I don't usually go for the 10.5 artillery because it's so expensive in points. I would normally go for Wesps, but they're not available here, so the Nebs will have to do it.
So tonight we have an early American formation, or 2 formations. We've got an infantry company, which has got 2 full platoons of 10 plus the bazooka, and one with 6 plus the bazooka and the command, and then company HQ. These guys are rated aggressive, green and confident. We have an artillery battery in support with an OP, and these guys are all rated aggressive, confident, trained. And then we have a tank company of all 89s, so the early version of the Lee, and they are all aggressive, confident, green as well. Okay, so the one advantage of these guys is they've got 2 guns. But they get +1 for having a secondary gun if they want to use the 37mm.
Is that a 7mm will be the one that does all the hitting?
That's right.
And these guys here, I think you said they rally on a 3+.
And the infantry do rally on a 3+, yeah.
Right.
There's no particular... if you start to have to get my artillery to counter-attack, I'm in big trouble.
So the main thing with your artillery is they've got that like training level, they're not green.
Yep.
So they will range in as well as most will.
Yep.
Whereas if you're using green against terrain, you can forget it. Today's mission is Encounter. It's very similar to Free for All, except that it has reserves. So you're not going to get everything on the table at the start. So that presents challenges to concentrating your force and in an attacking way. Both sides are aggressive in this game. You have to take an objective. The special rules are quite simple, and it's a meeting engagement with delayed and scattered reserves. So that means you're going to roll to see where your reserves come in, nominate your platoon, then roll your dice to see where they arrive. It could be in a great place, it could be in a bad place, but that's part of the charm of this mission, where you can't control everything and have to adapt. Now, because it's a meeting engagement as well, it means whoever goes first is not going to get to use artillery in their first turn. So that could be a disadvantage because the opponent may get the jump on them. So it can be a challenging mission, this one, guys. It's one that quite often ends up in a draw because it's hard to concentrate your forces, but you know, a challenging mission is always worthwhile doing to see if you can crack that nut or find that key to victory. Right folks, the mission is Encounter. It's one we've not done for a while. It's kind of like free for all in that both sides are just on a long strip of land with a deployment zone 12 inches deep and the objective zone being a sort of 8-inch box in from the side and the back edge. And this has got the delayed and scattered reserves, which makes it more interesting in some ways than free for all where everything's on the table. Now, we rolled off to see who was the attacker. Mark got the highest, so he's the attacker, which means in this game he chooses which side to attack from, places his objectives, and then he's the first person to put a platoon down. I'll do my objectives second, and so on and so on. So, Mark, you chose this side. Could you tell us first of all where you put your objectives?
Certainly. I put my objectives to the side of the hill, which is buried under one of Frank's mortar platoon guys, and then the ones under the side of the hill. There's a lot of open space here, but they've got to watch for the Germans have got some marauders who have got the long 76mm gun, so putting something over there be easy for Frank to knock out anyone that's trying to go over that way, basically. Then for deployment, we've basically got the infantry companies on the table, so we've got a platoon guarding this objective over here, we've got a second platoon guarding this objective here, we've got a third platoon over here at the moment. We've also got the artillery on table, the spotters on table, and then we've got the company HQ and one of the platoons, the weak platoon, from the tank formation on table as well. Hiding in case Frank gets first turn and can use his big guns to try and knock me out beyond the range that I can hit him, which is quite historic.
Yeah, it's very German. So you've got 2 platoons of 4 off your Lees. Yep. Off the table. And where's the smaller platoon of infantry?
The smaller platoon of infantry is this one over here.
Right, okay. So on my side, I've got, in reserve, I've got my armour cars, my Panzer IIs and my Panzer IIIs. So on the table I've got my anti-tank guns down here. In this game you don't have the advantage of ambush for static things like anti-tank guns, so putting them down somewhere is you're kind of committed. I could have put them in the middle, but you know, I thought I'm just going to stick them on a flank. And at least I've got something on at our flank. Then a platoon of infantry here, company command up on the hill, the marauders at the back ready to blitz and shoot and scoot, like that'll actually work. The mortars here, 4 mortars, and then in front of them platoon of infantry going over towards the buildings, and with the nebs are kind of sticking their noses out here. There's nowhere to really hide them, so I put them here behind some buildings so it will at least be harder to range in on them. And that's it folks, so we're going to roll off to see who gets first turn. It's not the attacker in this game, so we'll come back for that dice roll just now. Oh, a 6 and a 1. Is this going to be the end of my luck? To be honest, I hate going first in these games because you can fire your artillery, which means you'll get the jump on me with your artillery. But let's see what happens anyway. So, German turn 1. In terms of movement, some of this platoon has moved into here. These are high walls, folks, so visibility in and out here is quite restricted. It's pretty much through there. So I can't fire my mortars, can't fire my nebs. Anti-tank guns, 2 of them have got targets, but I'd have to be in my moving rate of fire, so that's 2 dice looking for 6s. So I'm better actually just keeping my sail got on the ground. So that's going to be a very, very boring turn 1 over for the Germans. So my apologies.
So American turn 1, no reserves, no rallying. So movement, the vehicles here, terrain dashed and then did a follow me to get into the lee of the hill here, so they can't really be seen by
The
anyone.
lee's in the lee.
Indeed. Everybody else basically got scared and stayed where they were. The OP did a great job and spotted the Germans over in the village, and its first attempt. So we had a nice little pop at them. We managed to knock out one of the infantry, just pinned two of the Nebelwerfers.
2 firepower to kill in your old 2 to 1 or something like that.
And we
The mortars were missed.
didn't do anything with the mortars either. So really quite a quiet turn from the Americans as well.
It can be like that this game, but things will hot up soon enough.
Yep.
Or we're going to have terrible dice rolls for reserves.
Yeah.
German turn 2, so the Nebs and the mortars at least unpinned, though I don't have, sorry, in the infantry, I don't have big hopes for them next turn. Sorry, first of all, movement. These guys are moved up to here from this objective. I'm just moving myself in the anticipation of being able to attack somewhere. And then in terms of shooting, the Nebs ranged in right in the middle of everything here, and got lots of potential damage and hits on the priest, but they made 3 saves, and otherwise all they did was kill 1 base of infantry, and then they killed 2 bases of infantry, sorry. Then the mortars ranged in here and managed to potentially do something to 1 priest and 1 infantry, but everything was okay with the saves. And in terms of shooting, these guys fired 2 of them in range of the company command, needing 6, he's got 1 hit. It was a potential bail, but firepower failed. So, still not too much happening, folks, but we probably need some reinforcements. That's kind of what this mission can be like. The thing that we don't know, though, is where the hell they're going to come on.
Okay, so American turn 2, managed to unpin everybody, which is really good. The company HQ decided that it wasn't such a good idea being a target for the Pak 38, so withdrew behind the cover. The brave Japs over here decided this was a good time to come across here and try and take the Marauder's out. Everybody else stayed still, waiting for the tank force to come on. So we then moved on to shooting. The artillery came in, did nothing except for managed to knock out 1 mortar, which might be quite useful because it might pin his mortars.
You only hit 1 thing that turn, but you did get the mortars.
Yeah, and then these guys had a pop at the Marauders, managed to knock out 1 of them, but that's all they've done. So they're maybe a little bit exposed. Frank's reserves could come on, so it could be a bit nasty if Frank gets some reserves and they come on in that sort of area. But hey ho.
German turn 3. So in terms of motivation, the mortars didn't unpin. In terms of reserves, no reserves. So in terms of movement, these guys blitzed up and they hauled down on this hill. They dug in. And then in terms of shooting, these guys fired 4 shots, needing 4s. Only got 1 hit, unfortunately. It was a kill, right? But could have been better, so I've shooting and scooted back. Now there's potential for those guys to be aggressive and keep coming forward, but I will at least be, if he's coming to the flanks, I am going to at least be concealed. And then these guys here turned the tables a little bit on the priests with their top armour 0 and managed to bail 1 and kill 1. And then a couple of failed saves here and here, but no past firepowers. So there is a bit of pin. These are all pinned anyway, but it's still looking very shaky. I could do with some reserves because at the moment it might seem a bit daft, but they could disappear in a blink of an eye if they get a hit because they're only front armour 2. So over to Mark for his turn 3, but he'll be rolling for reserves too.
Okay, so American turn 3. Everybody here unpinned rather, all the infantry unpinned. The guy here got back in, so therefore the platoon becomes safe again. Did have an effect for the bombardment. And then moving on to movement reserves, we didn't get any. On movement, these guys pulled back into behind the cover of the hill, primarily because if we'd come up here, We might have got some shots, but we're looking at 6s and 7s to start hitting people, which makes it not that economic. And those nasty little people with the AT-12s would probably come giving us a little bit of a...
Yeah, you would have needed 7s to hit me.
Yeah.
Because of the long range, stabilisers, secondary weapon. I still love the Lees, like, but they do have some
limitations.
On the move anyway.
Yep. So basically that was the American movement. The American shooting, obviously these guys didn't shoot now. So the artillery was called back in. It did come back in on its second turn, but then didn't hit diddly squat. So really a very non-turn for the Americans, really.
We need some reserves. Both of us need reserves, preferably in the right place, yes. But we'll see what the dice say.
Yes.
Gem in turn 4. The only motivation was the mortars have failed again. Now they've got the company command helping them, but they're like, no, I don't like this. They're just not unpinning. I got reserves, and it's these guys in the road for over in this corner. So that's where I brought them on. That was it in terms of movement. These guys were intended... Oh, sorry, the Marders have just moved into a position where they've got a bit more protection from that hill. They weren't able to see my main concern, which was these guys. Couldn't see them. So they moved on with 4 shots. The shot barreled 50s, just pointing back the way. And they got 1 hit out of 4. Failed the save, but then I failed my firepower. The Nebs over here managed to get loads of hits, and I think 4 potential kills that turn on infantry, and I failed every single firepower. Only needed a 4. I think I failed about 6 firepower so far, these Nebs, which would have made quite a mess of all these guys. And I'd have been, as I said to Mark, I would have felt quite confident if that was the case. As it is, I don't feel particularly confident. No way my dice rolling all these sealed firepowers. But I build a tank and pin some infantry. Mark's going to have 2 dice for reserves, and I'm thinking they're going to potentially come on and square up to my only real tank platoon.
Okay, so we managed to unpin all of our pinned down guys from the last turn's German Nibblewaffe shots. For reserves, and he got back in because he was built out, so he got back in. For reserves, we got the platoon, and fortunately it came over here on the corner. So then for movement, these guys came up and tried to outflank the panzers. This guy had to come around because he couldn't see them to shoot. This guy could still stay where he was and have a shot. That was the end of movement for the Americans. So then we put artillery fire back down, which didn't do anything other than we managed to pin at the moment the Nibbleweffers. We might have managed to get them killed, any of them, but we didn't manage to pin them at the moment. These guys fired and did nothing, but these guys came across and managed to KO 2 of the Panzer IIIs.
Yeah. Those guys got 1 hit with the main and 2 with the
37s,
and I managed to save them all. These guys though had the much better shots, and we were careful to target things within 8 inches so the mistaken target couldn't be used. I stuck him that way, hoping I could get some front armour bouncing onto him, but 2 hits went through, 9 against 6. The best I could get was a bale, and I didn't get close. Jimmy turn 5. So we're getting a bit long in the tooth in this game, folks, so we need our reserves on and in action. My motivation though, these guys unpinned, so as did the mortars, so all the artillery was back in action. I got reserves on as my Panzer II platoon. I wanted them over this side, because this is where there's potential for me to actually maybe do something. At least I think so. So I've just dashed them along. I tried to follow me, but that's all they got. It didn't work, sorry. And then I managed to blitz here, fortunately, so I'll be taking advantage of smoke of the burning wrecks from the flank, concentrated all my fire there, and I was lucky I got 4 hits from the long 50s, none at all from the short 50. And then Mark proceeded to roll absolute pile of shite for his save. It's at attack 9 against front armour 5, so he had a decent chance, 50-50 of at least surviving, and it was just 1s and 2s all the way. One got double bailed, the one in the end, and failed its motivation check. So it was 2 dead, 1 bailed. The one at the back I couldn't see. And then the artillery managed once again, one hit on a priest and Mark rolled a 1 for his save, but I failed my firepower, otherwise it would be dead. And then the mortars killed 1, and some failed firepowers over here from the Nebs. So these guys are living a bit of a charmed life at the moment. So Mark's final platoon of tanks will definitely be turning up next turn. Let's see where.
The American turn. Rallying. This platoon rallied. The company command stayed pinned down. This platoon stayed pinned down, which was quite a problem. It would be better if the platoons had swapped over, because I'm thinking of moving this platoon.
Yeah, this is the platoon you want to attack.
This guy stayed out, but he managed to stay in the game. Last man standing was okay. The reserves came on, but came on over on this side here. We then basically move into shooting. So the one gun that was fired, and actually managed to knock out a
They can't have gone so long without losing any. It's a miracle. There's actually even 2 of them left alive.
So over here, these guys went for their revenge and managed to KO one of the long 5s and bail the short 5, and the 37 was trying to knock out that one, which didn't work. These guys did nothing. They just had a pop and
They moved up and then fired,
but didn't do anything
because of range and stabilisers.
These guys came up to try and do a preemptive hit on these anti-tank guns and failed abysmally. So we'll have to see what their retribution is. 6 shots at 4s. Going to be fine. It's going to be fun. It's going to be sore, I think. And then that's basically the Americans' turn.
German turn 6. So in terms of motivation, everything unpinned. He got back in, so that was okay. In terms of shooting, they did terrible. Well, they didn't do terrible. They got 2 hits. Could have got more hits, but 2 hits and 2 saves. But these guys have got to save sometime. Can't expect them to fail all the time. Now these, I blitzed up onto the hill to get line of sight over there, and this is where I hoped for a bit more, to be honest, the 2 of them combined. But to be honest, all they got out of it was bales. The fact is, 1 dead is that there was a double bale. So 6 shots from there and 4 from there managed to do 3 bales. So it's not very effective, folks. The artillery, however, managed to get a couple of kills, which is something. But I think the upper hand is definitely passing to Mark. So we'll see what happens.
Right, so the Americans, I think he got back in.
He did, aye.
Oh, yeah, he got back in. These guys didn't unpin. The company command did unpin, and this platoon did unpin. Nobody else had to do anything other than he didn't get back in. So that was the American sort of morale aspect. Movement, these guys moved up. They guys stayed stationary. Those guys stayed stationary, and the infantry platoon came up to start adding a bit of additional threat to the Germans. So shooting, basically all tanks concentrated on the Panzer IIIs. They're now dead. And over here, we managed to knock out one of the Pack 38s. The artillery came down and did absolutely nothing.
Yeah, no hits this turn.
And that was the American turn, basically.
So the Americans have got to come and get the Germans, because the Germans have lost their only offensive platoon. German turn 7. Well, I'm running out of things to do and things to shoot with, folks. I've moved the Panzer IIs back over here. I was being optimistic and thought I'd maybe kill everything there and then go charging around to take the objective. But no, the Amicars are dead, so I'm just taking advantage of cover and forcing Mark to shoot me on the way past. The Marder stayed on the hill and then shooting scooted off it, and they've underperformed again. 4 dice last turn, got 1 hit, 1 bail. This turn, 4 dice, got 1 hit, 1 bail. These guys managed to kill 1 between them. The Nebs actually managed to bail 1. And then the mortars managed to kill a base of infantry. And that's about it, folks. So let's see if Mark can close in for the kill.
Motivation, the guys unpinned from the mortars. Because there was no huge Nebelwerfer batteries coming down, because they went over there, the guys over here were fine. So these guys have moved up, keeping out of sight. Tanks moved up to get a bit of concealment from the...
This one bailed back in.
And when the guy got back in. The company command came over to try and fire a couple of shots into here. And the two tank platoons, one guy bogged, so he didn't actually go anywhere, and the other guy came through to try and knock out the armoured cars. These guys pushed forward on the premise we'd knock out the armoured cars.
And take pot shots at him.
Yeah. So, when it came to shooting, everybody fired and missed. This guys, with their 37s, managed to bail the one of the armoured cars with the
one with the anti-tank rifle.
And fired at the Nebelwerfer and missed. The artillery did nothing as usual.
Because of reroll hits.
And we fired at the anti-tank guns and did nothing as usual. So, that's basically it.
German turn 8. So in that turn, in terms of motivation, it was the wee armoured car never got back in, which is a pity because that would have been a useful wee anti-tank 7 there. In terms of movement, the rest of the armoured cars have moved off. There's a line of smoke there, folks. The Panzer IIs have dashed off. These guys did a bit of movement so they could shoot that way and that way. And then in terms of shooting, I've got to come back to the nebs. I never did the nebs, right? In terms of shooting, well, like the mortars put smoke down, right? One Marder managed to get a kill over there. This guy here is laughing off everything that's coming at him.
You killed one of them?
Yeah, one's dead, but another one's like, you can't hurt me. And then a bit of shooting over here on these guys. Only some of them were visible, but it was enough for me to get a pin, but only one kill. And that was about it, really. So we're just going to roll the nebs. I've got to try and just maybe range the nebs in something and hope for the best. Right, folks. Motivation phase in Mark's turn. That last survivor ran away, and that last survivor ran away. So we've had a look and we're thinking, well, there's nobody going to get a win in this game unless we play for a month. There's always a potential, but it would just take us forever to do. So we're going to call it a draw. So we'll go over to a recap, guys, and see if we've actually learned anything from this. I learned something straight away. But I said straight away, I mean after about, 7 turns I learned something, but we'll come back to that. Right folks, over to a recap. So, it was another draw, unfortunately. Like I said, we could have played on. I've got my crazy guys heading over towards that objective, but you know, these two tanks could just turn around and shoot them up. Maybe my Marders could get them before they got my tanks, but then they've got to win the assault and everything. It could take a year. And here, the guys could potentially push them back, but they've got another infantry platoon that could come over. Take forever, guys. So we're going to go for a draw. Mark, what did you think about thoughts on your list?
The list itself, I'm quite happy with. It might have been better to have the long 75s on the Lees, which would have given them a AT-10 and a longer range, which would have been very useful when you're pushing forward, as I have been, to try and get that extra bit of range. But it was a useful thing. The infantry still struggle a bit, and in this battle, because they got pinned down by the Nebelwerfers, they didn't really get to do very much. Mm-hmm. If the Nebelwerfers hadn't been quite so effective, I'd have probably moved up earlier with the infantry to push on. But there was a couple of turns where basically they got pinned, so I couldn't really do much with them. But the list itself, I'm quite happy with balanced lists on the whole of an infantry company and a tank company. The infantry company tends to hold the objectives, and the tank company tends to be the ones that try and take the objective. Bit unfortunate at the end, with both platoons going at the same time. Mm-hmm. If they managed to hang on for a bit longer, I think we could have probably had a decisive result for a change. Mm-hmm. But the overall scheme of things, but it's always variable as to where things are going to come on. Yeah,
you can't really guarantee concentrate.
With these guys coming on in this wing, that basically helped me get the draw, because I could then concentrate and get the one tank platoon over there. If they're coming over here, it'd been a very different game. it's just the way the dice. The Marders were particularly nasty. Didn't really have much of a counter for the Marders unless I could get them somewhere in the open, or possibly get my artillery. My artillery should probably deployed over here, possibly.
Yeah, at least away from the infantry as well.
Away from the infantry, not so much. There was a problem with them being there. Actually, the purpose of them being there was actually to provide a little bit of anti-tank support for the infantry. But because of Nebelwerfers and the bigger template, they kept getting hit by it. Over here, he might have shot at them, but they probably had a better chance to keep firing and then do stuff, because they suffered, because you only get 3 of them in the American one, and once you've lost 1, you're down to 2 guns, which is obviously re-rolling hits, because otherwise we might have done something more to knock out some of your guys over there, because basically they spent the whole game knocking that out and knocked out, I think, 1 mortar platoon, 1 infantryman, and 1 Nebelwerfer in, 8 turns?
Well, for me, this list is a pretty defensive list with just the 1 tank platoon. It was always going to rely on it. Unfortunately, it got smashed to bits, but that was just me being really stupid. I only realised at the end I've got smoke. What I should have done was just put a smoke barrage down to protect me when I came on, concentrate on killing that platoon, knowing I would have a couple of turns at it. And then, using smoke again, I could maybe moved on to another platoon depending on where it came on. And that's what I really needed to do in this game. But sometimes when you're recording battle reports, folks, you get too caught up in the mechanics of the battle report and you forget some really important basic stuff. And the list in general, it was a defensive list. It was always going to be very difficult to get any momentum with this. But Germans and mid-war folks are tricky as hell. To get any kind of firepower in your tanks, you have to spend so much points on them. This was over 30 points for those tanks, and they're only front armour 5. The Marders killed 2 tanks the whole game because the luck wasn't in. But as Mark said, there's not a lot of counters for them, and if they'd have done a bit better, then that might have been enough to save some of that platoon and keep them in the game. And as far as artillery goes for these list guys, in the desert, you're either getting Lorraine Schleppers, which I don't have and I'm not sure what the points values are on them, or you're getting 10.5s that cost 14 points, which is too much for an artillery unit. These guys are 8 or 9, and those guys are 6, so you get 2 for the price of 1. I'm not going to spend that much points on an artillery unit, and I don't like Nebelwerfers. They're just too vulnerable, and you only get them in platoons of 3 or spend massive points on a huge big unit. And the firepower is 4. I spent an entire game failing firepowers over here. I reckon they failed about 8 firepowers and passed maybe
basically
5.
Yeah, probably about 5, maybe 6, because basically you killed the infantry with the most of the infantry.
I have some of the mortars as well.
Yeah, that's right. A couple of them were mortars.
Mortars killed a couple.
Probably was about 5 in total of the whole that died.
So I prefer a firepower 3 weapon.
Yeah.
But there you go, folks. The lesson for me in this game is don't forget about smoke.
Actually, I forgot about smoke as well, because actually, all this space over here, the Marders would have been shooting at me. I could have put smoke down, and the guys could have run behind the smoke.
Yeah, see, we both forgot about smoke, guys. Only smoke we brought to the game was the burning tanks. But there you go, folks. Hopefully it was entertaining enough for you. It's our first game of 2021, 2022 even. And there are probably going to be some more desert games with a new book that's coming out. I know, Mark, you're going to be working on your American forces and your options for that. So no doubt we'll see some more lists next time. I prefer to go my British. If my Marders aren't firing right, my Germans aren't firing right. But there you go, folks. Thank you for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Thanks again for subscribing. And if you'd like to subscribe, please do so. Mark, thanks for playing.
Thanks.
And folks, if you hit the bell button, we'll definitely see you on the next one.